Good morning, everyone.
So those of you who are new, you may not know, but we have this assembly every year, the Cum Laude Assembly, and it's a way in which what we are doing is honoring the highest levels of scholarship on campus. And I remind you that there's so many things we do here in a given week here. We play sports, we put on plays and concerts, you serve in the local community, you take part in clubs, but obviously we are first and foremost a school, and one where at the center of student life and where we devote, frankly, the majority of our hours and energy is our academic classes and to the life of the mind. And in many ways, for all the reasons you chose Taft when you came or you applied, clearly one of them was that it's a place with a robust and I think vibrant intellectual life. And so today's a day in which we celebrate that. And I guess what I'd like to suggest is we celebrate specific students who are being inducted into the Cum Laude Society, but I would argue that we are celebrating the life of the mind and in general. And, you know, you could stop every week here to acknowledge high scholarship. And as faculty, we are always talking about all of you and sharing stories of what's going on in the classroom and elsewhere. I just read an amazing essay by a student of mine in Macbeth, or two students in post-AP biology did an incredible lab, or my lower mids just had a fascinating discussion. It was so fun. Or did you see the Math Bash results from our team? As faculty, we're perpetually talking about that. And frankly, we delight in the intellectual life that we've chosen here and all that you do. And I think there are many qualities that we hope all of you have as scholars: curiosity, discipline, empathy, passion, enthusiasm, and so on. But I hope I might add one other and hope that you all have it or develop it in your time here, and that's self-reliance. Right? And there's nothing, by the way, nothing stopping you from developing that idea of self-reliance. Now, to even use the phrase self-reliance, and English teachers in the back would particularly understand this, is to beckon to one of our nation's most important thinkers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And some of you have encountered him in English or history class. And when I taught 19th century American literature in works as varied as Walden or Leaves of Grass or Huck Finn, I argued that each of these books was wrestling with Emerson's claims. That is, Emerson laid down some fundamental intellectual tenets, some ideas that all the great writers in that century had to wrestle with. And I said to some students just a moment ago who were sitting out in Lincoln Lobby, I said, we got talking about the novel Scarlet Letter, and they said they're about to start. And I said, well, if you really want to impress your teacher, you might present the thesis that the novel The Scarlet Letter is offering three different answers through three different characters to questions about Emerson's idea of self-reliance. Emerson arguing that we should be fully self-reliant. And his ideas matter that much, and that's why you still find him today. You find his quotes everywhere, whether it's calendars or yearbook pages, graduation speeches. The essay Self-Reliance was published in 1841. Emerson had been consolidating his thinking, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. He had given a number of lectures in Boston in the late 1830s. And the essay quickly became a call to this country for intellectual independence. And for me personally, it's one of the most important essays I've ever read. It is a long essay. It is, frankly, boring and impenetrable in places, but deeply powerful in others. You find yourself plodding heavily for a page, and then suddenly you are elevated and weightless with a single sentence. And the argument was explicit, as you'd imagine with a title, Self-Reliance, that to be an American scholar, to be an American, meant a complete reliance on the self, a rejection of conformity, and a belief that we all had divine powers within us. Remember, we were at that point, 1841, a young and insecure nation, perhaps only 2 generations old, and with a limited body of intellectual work. We did not really have a national intellectual past yet. We did not have our own Shakespeare, our own Newton, or Euclid, or Chaucer. So his was a call to arms, if you will, and a claim to a young nation that to look over its shoulder to the past and to worship at the great minds of Europe were terrible things. And I can only imagine how liberating, how bracing that essay must have felt to intellectuals at the time. He wrote this, one of my favorite quotes of his: "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." And I love the tension in the metaphor, right? The adjective iron suggesting something rigid and unbreakable, and the noun string, which suggests something taut and vibrating. To read an essay advocating self-reliance and then to have a discussion about it where students were acting with self-reliance by sharing unique insights of their own. That was really fun. We'd have that class and we'd say explicitly, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Now, they're bracing words for all of you. For haven't you had the experience where you've doubted yourself? You wondered whether your ideas had value? Were worried that a classmate might disagree with your premise? Emerson went even further in encouraging the reader, and he wrote, "A man should learn to detect and watch that gleam of light which flashes across the mind from within. Yet too often he dismisses without notice his thought because it's his." And then he said this, and here's the part you may recognize. "In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty." It's a really rich sentence. That gleam of light which flashes across the mind from within is very rich. Do a close reading. Imagine you're an English student asked to read that closely. The noun gleam that he says we all have suggests a kind of stubborn illumination, some divine power. It's an explicit assertion that you have godlike intellectual powers within you. The verb flashes tells us that these moments of insight or understanding are rare and fleeting, but electrically powerful. And that phrase, from within, suggests that we all have these powers within us. We don't need to look outside for them. It's very affirming. And the description of seeing your own rejected thoughts, does that sound familiar? Have you ever had an idea in class that you were about to share, and then you hesitated only to have someone else say the same thing and the teacher praise that idea? That's what Emerson is getting at, that there's a gleam of light within all of us, and we have to trust that. Detect it, he says. Don't dismiss it. Now, to be clear, his essay rang true in 1841, particularly to a young and adolescent nation, to a country that still looked across the ocean to Europe, to Shakespeare and Milton, or even Plato or Socrates for intellectual inspiration. His essay was a call to arms, if you will. It was like a pregame pep talk. It's a rallying cry. It's hard to think of what he wrote outside of that exact historical moment in which he wrote it. But it is also hard not to think that it's one of those rare essays that never gets old. He's very much talking to each of you. He's talking to the new student who feels intimidated by classmates who all seem so confident. To you who were educated in a philosophy, perhaps, where dutiful silence in a classroom of 30 was valued, and perhaps find these robust seminars new and strange. To you in the senior elective, questioning whether your ideas on the novel or lab or topic were good enough. To you wondering whether you could bring value to the debate team or ISP or Science Olympiad or what have you. And what he was saying, and what I believe, is that we can be confident that every one of you can be an Emersonian scholar. Every single one of us can be self-reliant and gleaming. And so today is really a celebration of that belief, that there is a divine spark, there is something gleaming intellectually in each of us if we can only be self-reliant and heeded. So that's what we celebrate today, and I'll ask Mr. Clifford to come forward. He'll read the National Merit winners and then the ranking scholars. So, Mr. Clifford.
The following students received commendation from the National Merit Scholarship Program for their outstanding performance last year on the PSAT, finishing in the top 3.1% of all test takers. Carolyn Baird, Riley Bragg, Sasha Bridger, Joseph Hahn, Eve Inglis, Jennifer Gian, Sophie Kami, Nicola Sumi Kim, Marissa Mission, and Kavya Selva. These were the ranking scholars at Taft for the 2015-2016 academic year, with the highest unweighted averages in their classes. Please stand and remain standing when I read your name. From the class of 2019, last year's lower mids, with the 94.7 unweighted average, Andrea Gura. From the class of 2018, last year's mids, with the 96.1 unweighted average, Yijing Kim. From the class of 2017, last year's upper mids, with an unweighted average of 97.3, Yiwei Ivory Zhu. For those of you who are new students, you probably don't know Ivory. Ivory was a one-year visiting scholar, and with the 97.3 average, that was a pretty good year. Yeah. Okay, I'm now going to read the information about the Cum Laude Society and give you the Cum Laude inductions. Founded in 1908, the Cum Laude Society is the national scholarship society in secondary schools, corresponding to Phi Beta Kappa and Sigma Xi in colleges and scientific schools. A maximum of 20% of the senior class may be elected into membership of the Cum Laude Society. This morning, we will induct 15 members in the class of 2017 who merit inclusion in the society based on their academic records for both their middle and upper middle years. At this spring's graduation, the first group will be joined by other seniors whose selection will be based upon their records for the upper mid and senior years. The 15 students included in this morning's meeting represent the top 9% of their class with weighted averages that for those 2 years ranged from a 96.3 to a 102.0. Will those being inducted in the Cum Laude Society please come forward when I call your name? Sung Hwan An, Sunny An. Carolyn Rose Baird. Riley Kathleen Bragg. Lauren Grace Fadiman. Eugenie Reed Grief. Gabriella Nicole Gura. Joseph Hahn. Zemaima Hussein. Zigamontas Giavaltis. Sophie Valentine Kami. Marissa Nicole Mission. Yuste Maria Simonaskete. Luke Austin Summer. Sydney Trevenin. Christopher Zillow.
Well, congratulations to those 15 scholars for all they've done in their career. And again, I guess I'd leave with that admonition that Emerson gave, and it was so relevant and so needed for a nation in 1841, but it is one of those rare works which I think still speaks to us today, and that's why we continue to talk about it and why we continue to read and wrestle with Emerson. And I guess I just would offer it as a challenge to you that each of you, when you have that moment in class and you have that doubt, remember what he said, and that is that we all have a gleam of light within, and that to trust thyself, for every heart vibrates to that great iron string. So even as you go to your next class, make sure that when you have that moment and you have an insight, don't let that moment go by and you've missed it. Share that idea in class or in a discussion or debate, whatever it is, okay? So congratulations all and have a great day. See you.